How is coronavirus affecting the sports industry? All major events have been cancelled or postponed as the pandemic takes its toll worldwide. A multi-billion-dollar business is now at stake. So, can sports survive the outbreak? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Peter Dobbie. It is a very, very lucrative business and almost recession-proof, but sport is being dealt a financial blow by the coronavirus. Major events have been cancelled or postponed for the first time in many years. From the Tokyo Olympic Games to football matches, fields, arenas and stadiums will be empty for a long time to come. Athletes, organisations and thousands of people who work at the sporting venues all affected. Revenue from broadcasting deals, sponsorship contracts and match tickets, they're all drying up. The business model for many sports is under threat and has to adapt to measures to counter COVID-19. But some sporting events are going ahead. The Bundesliga season could resume in Germany this month, and the NBA does appear ready to reopen its practice facilities. OK, let's have a look at some of sport's estimated financial losses. In the UK, football, cricket and rugby could lose around $860 million in the coming year. One analysis firm puts Japan's losses in revenue terms for postponing the Olympic Games at $75 billion. Another recent analysis is predicting US sports will lose at least $12 billion. The top 5 football leagues in Europe, well, they could lose as much as $4.5 billion in combined revenue if the pandemic wipes out the entire season. OK, there we are. Here we go. Let's introduce our panel for you. From Liverpool, we have Kieran Maguire, football finance lecturer at the University of Liverpool. In Yaoundé, in Cameroon, on Skype is Mbiele Happi. He's the manager of the retired Champions League footballer Samuel Eto. And in Milan, also on Skype, we have Tancredi Palmeri, a BeIN sports correspondent and formerly a presenter for UEFA. Welcome to you all. Kevin Maguire first in Liverpool. How many sets of nerves are being exercised in boardrooms, not just up and down the UK, but around the world?
I think practically every club is looking anxiously at the progress which is being made or is not being made in terms of finding a way of addressing the global health issue. Football cannot continue before a paying crowd until a vaccine has been found in reality. And therefore, clubs will have been getting out their spreadsheets, looking at the income that's not coming in and working out how long they can continue to pay wages for.
Tancredi Palmeri in Milan, 2020 was supposed to be a golden year for international sport. Given what we're dealing with, could it have gone any other way so far?
Well, honestly, for the whole world, it's an unpredicted scenario. I believe the most common thing we heard, and you probably even said many times in news, is a scenario that wasn't seen since the World War II. And considering how it has gone, and considering that everything is happening, it's something in progress. Because if football, if Formula One, if MotoGP, for example, they will be able to recover part of the season. Still, some things would be better than it was. But it is for sure that from now on, for the next season, many things financially will have to change. We'll have to change the prices. We'll have to change the way football is thinking, the future, the budget, the revenues. Also, the fact that we don't know for how long we will have to do without crowd attendance. So the sooner football starts, we talk especially about football starts to rethink about how to get the revenues, the better it is, because this has started now, maybe will not be as violent as it has been the last 2 months, but it won't go one day from the other like it has happened at the end of February.
Mbiele Happi in Yaoundé in Cameroon there. Take us through the impact on Africa, because it occurs to me that some of the African countries, it's like some of the European countries. Football is a religion and people can't practice that religion. They can't go and watch a game.
Yeah, I mean, what is happening today in the world, especially concerning African football, it's something that we couldn't have imagined before. I think, as my friend was saying, we have to rethink about the organization of football. We have to think about how to impact people again with football, because we do not know exactly when this thing will stop. And actually, when things will start it again, we will have to make it different way. The impact, the financial impact is very huge, because now that we will not be facing people not going to the stadiums, people not going to watch the games. I mean, it's going to be completely different. And we do not know exactly how. But I mean, the African Confederation, they're thinking about how to make it happen. They're thinking about solutions to come out from the crisis, but it won't be easy for everybody. I think we will have, things will never be like before.
Kieran, your speciality is the financing of sport, and I guess as well a corollary of that would be where the money comes from and where it goes to, because there's clearly almost like a fiscal pyramid scheme here, where the revenue comes in, say, from advertising or something like ticket sales. Is any part of that equation, is it ring-fenced based on previous years of prosperity? i.e., are they insulated against taking the kind of hit that we're talking about?
No, I mean, most football clubs have a model which is to aim for sporting success. So therefore, the financial considerations are very much on a secondary level. Even if we take a look at something as successful as the Premier League, 2/3 of clubs are losing money on a day-to-day basis. And they're reliant upon owners to come in and rescue them. If we take a look at Roman Abramovich at Chelsea, he put in around about $300 million into Chelsea last season, purely to allow the club to fund the acquisition of new players. So with so many clubs living on a month-to-month basis, a disaster of this nature, which has taken away the three main sources of revenue. Clearly, there's no match day income because we can't have crowds at matches. The TV companies are no longer willing to pay the clubs because they've got nothing to broadcast. And the sponsors, they're equally unhappy because their products aren't being associated with the clubs anymore. So football has lost all of its income. It's now reliant upon owners, and it's also reliant upon if it's got any savings. But very few clubs do. As soon as you go away from the elite clubs in the major leagues, then most clubs have relatively low bank balances, because it's that next match and the money generated from that next match which is going to see it through to the next pay packet in terms of the players and the other running costs.
So, Patrick, I guess that model can be applied where you are indeed talking about across the entire continent of Africa. The money comes down to broadcasting rights, the commercialization of that, so that's sponsorship and advertising and event day tickets. Out of those three revenue sources, those streams, which one has taken the biggest hit where you are?
The biggest hit, the big difficulties now are the federations, because the federation are the main responsible of the championships. Also, they receive. I mean, they because here in Africa we're not professional, we are amateurs, and then the federation, they give like an amount to the clubs to try to help them for the championships. So I mean, it's gonna be a kind of way that maybe the governments too will have to put some money for the organization of the football, but it's the main impact of the broadcasting, the sponsorships will be seen on the organization. So I think that this is the question they're thinking about. I think with the African Confederation, they're thinking about how is going to be the next season, because with this disease, everything has stopped. But I think that we are thinking again more on how to organize these financial things, and also, I mean, the main and general organization on the football here in Africa.
Tancredi in Milan, how does the Italian league come back from this, looking forward to next season, given that they were just in the middle of negotiating the rights for this season coming anyway, and then they had to put everything into suspended animation because coronavirus hit?
Yes, indeed. It's a very good point, because if we look at the top 5 leagues in Europe, I think that one huge difference is made exactly by those who had already negotiated the sale of their rights, like Bundesliga, like Premier League, and those like Serie A that exactly in these weeks they were preparing the auction exactly at the beginning of February. The thing is that before looking into the next season, there is already to save this season. That's why Serie A is pushing and lobbying a lot to try to get back on the pitch, like the German teams have done in Germany. But why? Because, for example, in Premier League, all the clubs had already received the money of the season they had to receive from the TV rights in England. In Germany and in Italy, instead, this last chunk, and when I talk about chunk, I'm talking about some 300 million euros, so on which basically every club is living on. Most of the clubs have already spent that money they had received for this season. Well, they want to get back because they need to get that money. Then they will negotiate the next contract, and in the next contract will have a weight. As we heard, all those companies' advertisement that will not want to pay the same, the TV that they know that they are losing, and they will lose money from advertisement, so they won't pay the same money. It's a virtual circle that immediately become a vicious circle. But of course, the one that needs the money to literally breathe of that is the football clubs. And that's why they are facing, especially in Italy, an emergency, I would say, months after months. First was the health emergency. Now it's the economical emergency for the next 2 months. And then it will be, by August, the future emergency, because maybe you have survived, but you are already in need for the time to come.
Kieran, in Liverpool, SVG Sports, a website in the States, is saying that within 1 month of coronavirus officially having hit American sport, 53% of sport just flipped and became online sport. And the clever cookies, the clever people ahead of that, what the companies did was they opened up all their back catalogue of recorded events. Can they make money doing that, or can they make enough money to tide them over to the good times that presumably will come back again?
I think in terms of eSports, there is an audience for it. And those clubs, those associations which do have a relationship with eSports will get some interest, but that will be from a different demographic. In terms of the traditional sports fans, they don't really buy into eSports in the same way. They want to see the drama and the excitement of a live event. In terms of the back catalogues, again, there is some interest in it, but the thing which sets sport apart from practically everything else that we see on the broadcast media is its unpredictability. So therefore, watching a football match when you already know the result isn't the same experience as watching it live. And that's what generates the huge audiences. So having issues of this nature of eSports and back catalogues, it helps in a little way. But until we get some form of live broadcasting, and I would imagine that if the Bundesliga does return next weekend, the viewing figures across the whole of Europe will be incredible, because all football fans will be desperate to see some form of football. And I think the first game is scheduled to be Schalke versus Dortmund. And I think I'll be watching, although I don't normally watch German football. And I'd imagine that will be the attitude which is taken by the vast majority of fans. And then we will all be taking some good feelings from this, because here in the UK and in Italy and Spain, we'll be taking the view that if Germany's managed to get back, how many weeks are we behind Germany in terms of dealing with the coronavirus? And everybody mentally will be working out a time when football will return in their own countries. I think it's a general acceptance that football is going to return behind closed doors, probably for the remainder of this year, potentially for the whole of the next season. but some form of streaming services, some form of the use of technology will allow clubs to claw back substantial sums in terms of making up for the loss of matchday income and replacing it with something else.
Tancredi, Palmeri in Milan. Take me through how they do that, because Italian football, in effect, was one of the epicenters, because there was that big game in February. Lots of Spanish fans had flown to northern Italy. They enjoyed the game. They had a couple of days in Italy, and they took the coronavirus back with them to Spain. So they've got to be seen. Well, you're shaking your head, but that's a journal of record. That's what happened. So they've got to be seen in Italy to be doing a live match with people who've put their money across the turnstile to get a ticket and do social distancing. How do they do it?
Well, I was shaking my hands because at the end of February, actually 5th of March, was revealed that the first coronavirus case in Spain was dated back to, not actually the case, but the death by coronavirus was dated back to February 13th, which was 6 days before Atalanta-Valencia was played, and was actually exactly in Valencia. So for as long as we know, and we really, so far, and probably will never know enough on where the virus started, as far as we know, could be actually that from Valencia was brought into Bergamo or into Italy or into Milan, but actually probably was, as we are learning in these days, everywhere. Talking about the social distancing, and if we talk, there are two matters in that issue: the crowd and the football players. Well, if we talk about the crowd, the debate is extremely short. There is no crowd at football games, as Kieran was saying, probably for the remainder of 2020, potentially for the whole next season, possibly until, if not a vaccination for coronavirus, at least until it is under control, the virus pretty everywhere, because simply something we never learned to deal with. And if social distancing has to be applied everywhere in the world, then a sporting event is exactly the opposite of that. If we talk about the football, if we talk about the fact that football is possibly, if not the sport, but one of the sports where the least can be applied the basic rules you need to fight coronavirus, which means social distancing, which means also personal protections, mask, gloves, when you are among other people.
Okay.
Well, for that, there is only one way: a long-standing, not quarantine, but isolation of clubs, like it happens for the World Cup, for example, before a World Cup, before Euro, and testing, and continuously testing.
Okay, let's go back to Patrick and Mbiele Happi in Yaoundé. Let's broaden it out for a second, Patrick. In 2018, global sport was worth $471 billion US. That's everything. That's from throwing darts at a board on the TV, to football, to boxing, to the NBA. The NBA in the States, of course, pulled the plug on the whole thing very, very quickly. Arguably, they did the right thing. In Africa, where you are, what happens if the economic comeback from COVID-19 is a V-shape, but the comeback of fans going to watch sport is not that rapid, it's not that fast? Because according to, I think, NBA Turner Sports conducted a poll, 80% of people say they're scared to go back to a live sporting event, whatever the sport may be. How do they handle that there in Cameroon?
Well, the difficulty, as I was saying, is that how the things will be moving after this COVID, because we're sure that either in Africa, and actually not also in Africa, in US, everywhere, people will be scared to go back to the pitch, because we will not know exactly if it's still possible to contract that virus or not. So it's a kind of psychological problem that we'll have to resolve. Obviously, if the economy comes back, of course, we will not have straight revenues as soon as it comes back. but we'll have to see and face how people will get it back and how we educate people more to go back to the pitch. We're talking also about this social distance and everything. For me, it's something really complicated in terms of sport, in terms of collective sport, because when you talk about collective sport, you talk about contacts. It can be basketball, it can be football, but it's quite difficult to apply it. On the out of the stadium, I really do not know how it's gonna look like, but it's something possible. But we will not have, or we will lose a little bit the football that we've had before. Of course, it will take time maybe for people to understand or to get back exactly to how it was before. But I think things will be moving step by step. This is what I think. Now, how it's going to be perceived here in Africa, people here will face it maybe the way I'm explaining, meaning that it will take time for people to go back to the pitch.
Okay.
Actually, people just need one thing. They need to be sure that when they're going, they are safe. So if we're sure that we can have it later on, I mean, that will be the best thing to
Kevin Maguire in Liverpool, are we talking about make or break? If the coming, say, 9 months or 12 months doesn't go well, particularly for some of the poorer sports who are still eye-wateringly wealthy, but if you've got the head of British Rugby saying, look, we've got to stage those big internationals at Twickenham, because if we don't, 85% of all our revenue disappears in one season, and we can't sustain that. That's a bad situation for him, for the associations, for the clubs, and for the fans.
I think there's no reason why sport should be immune from what we're seeing in the tourism industry, what we're seeing in terms of airlines, what we're seeing in terms of hospitality and manufacturing. In terms of sport, it's unique in many ways because it has a very high wage bill, which tends to be concentrated on few individuals. So what is necessary is for people to come together to accept that it's a shared responsibility between players, owners, administrators, and so on. The only way that sport can survive is either A, to go into hibernation and effectively cut back on costs until it returns, or B, rely on extremely wealthy owners to fund clubs and individual sports over the course of the pandemic. But many of those wealthy individuals themselves are suffering huge losses in their wealth because it's tied up in particular assets which are falling in value. So it's going to be a huge challenge for the whole sporting world. But I think there will be a gradual return of some sports. The chances of those sports such as horse racing taking place without an audience. Well, many horse racing venues are practically empty as they are already. It's only for major
Kieran,
events.
I'm going to pause you there.
If we take a look at rugby,
just want to put one final last point, if I may, to
Tancredi
Palmeri in Milan. Tancredi, we've got a minute left on the programme. If we want to go to any international sporting event, do we as fans have to accept a reality, and it's this, that the people who are staging and running the event, be it a football game, an NBA game, a cricket match, whatever, they can make us as safe as possible, but they can't make us totally safe, because those two things are very different?
Absolutely. If there will be a crowd attending these huge sporting events in the next times, before vaccination will be around, I'm predicting that will be an elite crowd that can afford those few tickets that can be available. I'm imagining that arena of 5,000 people, if we talk about basketball, could be available maybe only for 500, 1,000 people, same as a stadium, because you need also many people to control the access. So the world is changed for a bit of time, which could also mean that the TV and the sports enjoyed by TV could be more important because it will be the only way to watch sports.
OK, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for contributing to this debate here on Inside Story. Thank you to our guests. They were Kieran Maguire, Patrick Mbiele Happi and Tancredi Palmeri. And thank you too for watching. You can see the show again anytime via the website, aljazeera.com. And for more discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter at AJ Inside Story, or tweet me. I'll tweet you back. I'm at Peter Dobbie1 from me, Peter Dobbie. And the team here in Doha, thanks for watching. I will see you very soon. For the moment, bye-bye.